Well, good morning, everyone. I want to extend Christian greetings to all in the name of Jesus. You can turn to the book of 1 Corinthians. One of the things that when you are preaching through a book is there's always a worry that somehow you're going to come to a Sunday where the message and the rest of the service is going to be very disjointed. But I'm just amazed. We are ready for chapter 13. The title of the message this morning is The Greatest Gift, and we're going to talk about love this morning. And I think it fits very well into our discussion of the morning. This passage is probably one of the most well-known passages in the whole Bible. You find it on mottos, you find it on coffee mugs, you find it on tapestries. I was recently at a thrift store, and there it was, a big motto, had all these wonderful words on them. And that is all great. But you know, if we dig down into this chapter, I feel like it's more like walking in a minefield than it is walking through a field full of flowers. Sometimes, because of the way it's portrayed, I think we maybe miss the significance of all this. There's a danger in missing the significance, and it's sort of a warm, fuzzy kind of a thing, and we actually don't really dig down in it too deep. So my goal this morning is to dig deep and to find out what God wants to share with us. The context where this is written, I think, is very significant. We already, last passage in chapter 12 was talking about the spiritual gifts and how they are to be used. Seems like the Corinthians were having a little bit of an issue with thinking one gift was better than the other. They were exalting themselves one above another. And Paul was warning them and teaching them that the purpose of the gifts are to edify the whole body, not for individual exaltation. And he ends that chapter by saying, earnestly desire the best gifts, and yet I show you a more excellent way. And then that's sandwiched between chapter 14, which he goes back into some more explanation, and specifically about the gift of tongues and order in the church. And again, so right in the middle of all that, all this somewhat controversy, Paul stops and says, "There's one thing I want you to get straight, and that is that love is the greatest gift." Just as a little bit of background again, some of the challenge facing the church at Corinth starts out, he talks about the favoritism that was there. Some were Paul men, some were Apollos men, some were Peter men. That's their guy. They were impressed by worldly wisdom. They were wowed by that. If someone could really get up and speak well and put forth a good argument, there was an appeal there. There was immorality that was not being dealt with in the church. They were suing each other. They were taking each other to law for sport. It was part of the almost part of the entertainment of the day was to sue each other, and that had trickled into the church as well. They weren't very considerate of each other when they come together for their love feast. Some would go ahead and eat before the rest of them got there, and there wouldn't be enough for the person that came later. And there was, as I mentioned, an unhealthy understanding of what the gifts were all about. And right in the middle of this, we have this passage on love. So there's one thing that Paul when he stops here, he said, there's one ingredient that is necessary. And I was thinking about that. You know, it's sort of like oil in an engine. I remember as a boy watching Dad take an engine apart, all the different parts, the component parts. We'd put it all together, tighten all the bolts, torque the nuts down. But if you didn't put oil in that engine and you tried to fire it up, it would self-destruct in a matter of seconds. Or it's like if you want to try to make bread without flour. There's some things that that simply do not work. And that one essential ingredient for relationship, for brotherhood, is love. The word here is agape. I think we're familiar with that. The concept of agape love is actually, it was rare in secular Greek culture, but it of course is very common in Scripture because it's the love that God has for us. The other kinds of love, just as a review, we have the phileo love, which is more the brotherly love, where we get the word Philadelphia. Eros is more of an erotic kind of love, but the kind of love that he's speaking about here this morning is agape love. Leon Morris put it this way: the love of God is a love for the utterly unworthy. It is a love which proceeds from a God who is himself love. It is a love lavished on others without a thought of whether they are worthy to receive it or not. It proceeds rather from the nature of the lover than from any merit of the beloved. So, especially that last phrase, it proceeds rather from the nature of the lover than from any merit to the beloved. In other words, God's love is unconditional towards us. It didn't depend on whether we were worthy to receive it. And that's the kind of love that we're called to this morning. The first three verses here, he talks about the importance of love, and he makes three really strong statements. And I'm just going to read the first three verses. It says, "Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am become sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith, so that I could remove mountains but have not love, I am nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, but have not love, it profits me nothing." Now, I just want us to stop just a little bit and just think about what he's saying here. He said, if I could speak with the tongues of men and of angels. On our trip to Chile, we had a flight attendant, and they made the announcement that we have someone on board here who can speak 5 languages. And I think she could speak English, Spanish, Portuguese, a little Mandarin, Chinese, and I can't quite remember what the 4th or the 5th language was. There are many, many languages in the world. 5 is just a drop in the bucket. But, you know, what if we had someone up here this morning that could speak 30 languages? I think we would be pretty wowed by that. We'd be pretty impressed by that. And then he talks even about angelic tongues, heavenly tongues. Or, you know, perhaps he's talking about someone who can, we sometimes say, well, he can speak like an angel. Someone who's very eloquent. And he says, if love is not the motivator, if love is not part of that, it's like a gong. It's going boing, 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 or a clanging cymbal. And remember last time as we talked about the mystery religions, and one of the things that they would do would be bang on a gong and bang on cymbals in order to get themselves worked up into a frenzy. And I think, you know, that may have been in the back of Paul's mind as he was talking about all this. And he said, you know, if you could do all this and love is not part of that, it's no better than these people out here that are banging on a gong. Yesterday morning during the wedding, sitting right there in that front, and I don't know if anyone else heard it, but there was one of the fans was making a moaning sound. It was, And it got to the point where it was extremely distracting. I could hardly listen to Conrad's devotional because this thing was going whoop, whoop, whoop. And sort of, was it coming over the speaker? Was it coming, we finally figured out it was the fan. But it's annoying. It's a noisy nuisance. And he says that if we could speak all the languages, if we could even understand the tongue of angels, and love isn't part of that, it's nothing more than that thing. Ooh, ooh. It's a noisy nuisance. Then he says if we had the gift of prophecies and we understood all mysteries and all knowledge, and we had faith that could move mountains. Now, there's a lot of mysteries out there. There's a lot of things that we don't understand, and sometimes it'd be nice to ask someone, what's this all about? Suppose we had somebody up here this morning that you could ask them, and they knew the answer to that. All knowledge, all knowledge. It says all knowledge. If someone had faith that whatever they have such a faith that whatever they believe, and have faith in it, it comes to pass. They move mountains. And he says, what does he say? It amounts to a little bit? He says, I am nothing. So we could take a marker here. But it's a big zero. And I don't know if that grips us, but that's how important love is in this whole equation. We're nothing. So he says if we had all mysteries, if we knew all mysteries, that's a zero. All knowledge, that's a zero. Faith that could remove mountains, that's a zero. Without love. And then he says, what about we could bestow all our goods and feed the poor? Without love, that's a zero. We can give our body to be burned, be a martyr. Zero. It's only when love is put there that those take on any significance whatsoever. And that was challenging to me, as I think we would, in our own minds, say, well, it values a little bit if I had all that going for me. But Paul says if love is not this godlike love is not part of our life, then it has no significance until we add love. And then all these other things take on tremendous significance. Love is absolutely essential. It's that essential ingredient that without it, really nothing much else counts. Verses 4 through 7 then sort of explain this love. Not so much what it is, but what it does. And my understanding is in the Greek, they're all verbs. Someone has described it as different facets of a diamond, and there's 15 of these, 15 facets, and we'll spend about 20 minutes on each one now. We'll try to go quickly here. 15 facets of a diamond. And there's an exercise I would like us to do as we go through that. I would like us to, while we're going through there, I'm going to put my name, put your name in the place where the word love is. We could also put our congregation's name where the word love is. And as we go down through here, I'd like to just have us think seriously and evaluate where we are. The first facet that he mentions is love is patient, suffers long. The word really means that love has a long fuse. It burns slowly. Chrysostom said it's used of a man who is wronged and who has it easily in his power to avenge himself, but doesn't. There was a man named Albert Ingersoll who lived around in the early 1800s, and he was a avowed atheist. And he would go around and make speeches defying and disputing the the existence of God. And he always made a big show. About halfway through his speech, he would stop and pull out his watch, and he would set the timer for 5 minutes. And he said, "I'll give God 5 minutes to strike me dead for what I've just said." And then he would make the big show of it. And then 5 minutes later, the fact that nothing happened, he would say, "See, God doesn't exist." And one individual commented, he said, "Did Mr. Ingersoll think he could exhaust the patience of God in 5 minutes?" Love is patient, and God is that way as well. Love is kind. The Greek word actually has the idea of to make yourself useful, to be constructive. You know, in our world, to be strong is to show how tough you are. My wife had an experience at Walmart here at the optical center. There was a very friendly young man was helping her choose her glasses, and they got to talking about. He found out we raised a bunch of boys. We were just getting ready to go to Chile, and she was telling about how our whole family was going to go there, and he all of a sudden his ears kind of perked up because he said, you know, the idea of raising boys and manliness and all that. And then he related a story that he said he and his fiancée were looking for a house, and so they were looking around at this house, and during the process, he apparently said something to his fiancée that was unkind, and it bothered him. They kind of parted that way, and the next day he said he called her up and apologized, and he made this comment. He said, "I guess that wasn't very manly." And Marla said, I beg to differ with you. I think that was probably the most manly thing you could have done. But, you know, in our world, to be kind, they think that is a sign of weakness. But love is kind. God is our example. Romans 2:4 says, "Or do you despise the riches of his goodness, forbearance, and long-suffering, not knowing that the goodness of God leads you to repentance, the kindness of God?" Ephesians 4:32, "And be kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God in Christ forgave you." Love is kind. Number 3, love does not envy. And we could think a lot about jealousy, discontentment. You know, a lot of times we think about jealousy as, you know, wanting to have envy. We want something that someone else has. But there's another kind of envy, I think, that's even more, probably more insidious, and that is that we don't really want what they have, but we hate that they have it. It's sort of a subtle thing. It's mean-spirited, and that was be exemplified by Solomon. Remember the two ladies that came to Solomon? They both had a baby. One of the woman's babies had died, and they were disputing whose baby was whose. And Solomon said about just cutting the baby in half, and of course the real mother was opposed to that. But the attitude of the other one, sure, you know, go ahead, is probably the worst kind of envy that there is. And when envy affects our lives and the lives of our church, it's destructive, very destructive. So love doesn't envy. Love doesn't boast, doesn't parade itself. I think the old King James says doesn't vaunt itself. That's not a word we use real often, vaunt itself. Doesn't seek a platform to parade my accomplishments. And I'd just like to read back up in 1 Corinthians and read chapter 4, verses 6 to 7. He says, "Now these things, brethren, I have figuratively transferred to myself and Apollos for your sakes, that you may learn in us not to think beyond what is written, that none of you may be puffed up on behalf of one against the other. For who makes you differ from another? And what do you have that you did not receive? Now if you did indeed receive it, why do you boast as though you have not received it?" So there's a problem that the people in Corinth had. They were boasting about things that Paul says was given to you by God. You know, I was thinking about how does this practically work itself out? And, you know, I think one of the things, maybe we've been around someone or maybe we're involved in this ourselves, where we're interested in a conversation as long as it involves me. But as soon as the conversation switches from that, and then we become uninterested. That would be a way in which we boast or seek a platform to exalt ourselves. Love doesn't boast. The next one is similar to it. Well, there was another example I wanted to, just a little illustration. A little boy was out fishing, and he only had a little stick and a bent pin for a hook, but he was catching a lot of fish. And another boy came along who had the best of the fishing outfit, and this sort of strikes a chord in me because I grew up in Middle Spring there along a creek, and we never had the very fancy equipment, but we did learn to know the creek, and we're fairly successful. And sometimes, you know, people come along with all the trappings without success. But the boy with the best of fishing outfit, he come across this boy with a long string of fish, and he asked the boy the reason for his success. And the boy said, "The secret of it is that I have to keep myself out of sight." And, you know, that I found that was true when I was as a young boy fishing. You know, sometimes the fish, if they see you, they would disappear. So if you keep yourself out of sight, and, you know, the secret to success is that we need to keep ourselves out of sight. And, you know, the scripture says that Saul, while he was little in his own estimation, was successful. It was when he became boastful and proud that the problem arose. Love is not proud. Number 5. It's a similar idea. The Greek word means to be puffed up like a bellows. We've fished on the Outer Banks already, and you pull in a little puffer fish. They're about this long, and then they blow themselves up like a volleyball. You know, again, we live in a society that sort of says, strut your stuff. You can be what, you know, show them who you are. And, you know, modern philosophy of child rearing is sort of based on that. You know, you're the greatest. Our political system is definitely based on that. You know, puff ourselves up, make ourselves look really good. William Carey, who was a missionary to India, had a background as a cobbler. He repaired shoes. And yet, as he went to India, God gave him a great gift for translation, and he translated the scriptures into 34 different Indian dialects. This was during the time of the British occupation there, and occasionally Carey would have the opportunity to rub shoulders with the high society folks. And he was looked down on because he didn't have the right pedigree. And one of the high society folks that tried to make him look bad said, they come up to Carey one day and they said, "So, Mr. Carey, I hear you're a shoemaker." To which Carey replied, "Oh no, I am a shoe mender, not a shoemaker." And that just exemplifies the attitude of not puffing yourself up, not making yourself bigger than what you are. Christ is our example. In Philippians 2, we know that passage where it says he lowered himself, became a servant. The world exalts arrogance, but arrogance has a big head. and love has a big heart. Love is not puffed up. Love is not rude. Number 6. Question I have is, are bad manners wrong? Is it okay to have bad manners? I think it's one of those things sometimes that we sort of put in one of the lesser categories. Yeah, it's not ideal, but love is not rude. Love is not inconsiderate. Love is polite. Love is gracious. Love is tactful. Love is considerate. Do we make people wait on us? Are we consistently late? Are we inconsiderate of the things that they need? And, at the root of rudeness, I think, is selfishness. And so love is not rude. How are we doing in our exercise and when you put our name there? Am I patient? Am I kind? Do I have a problem with envy? Do I boast? Am I proud? Am I rude? If I'm honest with myself, it makes me squirm just a little bit. Number 7, love is not self-seeking or selfish. I'm just going to illustrate this one, I'm just going to read 2 inscriptions. The first inscription sounds like it may be that we're on a tombstone. The first one sounds like it may be made up. I don't know. But it makes the point. Here lies a miser who lived for himself and cared for nothing but money and wealth. Now where he is and how he fares, nobody knows and nobody cares. There's another inscription. This is real, on a tombstone in London at St. Paul's Cathedral. And it goes like this. Sacred to the memory of General Charles George Gordon, who at all times and everywhere gave his strength to the weak, his substance to the poor, his sympathy to the suffering, and his heart to God. So what a difference in what people's perception of us are as a person. Love is not self-seeking. It's not selfish. Some years ago, there's a brand of frozen pizza called Tombstone, and the advertising slogan was, "So what do you want on your tombstone?" And I thought about that. What is my epitaph going to be when I'm done, dead and gone? Would it be more like the first one there, where they say that person just lived for himself, or is the epitaph on my tombstone going to be one that people remember, that I gave my strength to the weak, my substance to the poor, my sympathy to the suffering, and my heart to God? And that would be my desire. Number 8, love is not easily angered. The Greek word here is the word where we get our word paroxysm. That word we might not be real familiar with, but it's sort of the idea of just about ready to blow a gasket. I mean, red and puffed up and just on the verge of blowing. It has the idea of a violent burst of emotion. We see this probably in like road rage or something like that, where people are just on the edge and it takes just a little bit to set them off. People get on your nerves. You're touchy. You're really quick to snap. And a person who has this kind of an attitude has a tendency to blame other people. Like, if he just wouldn't be that way, then I wouldn't be this way. Or if he wouldn't say that, then I wouldn't have reacted the way I did. Do people need to walk on tiptoes around you? That's the question. Are you like a wheelbarrow with a flat tire, hard to push, easily upset? There's people that live like that. How am I? Am I a touchy person? Am I the kind of person that people have to tiptoe around me because I'm easily angered? Love is not easily angered. Number 9, love keeps no records of wrong. The word here is an accounting term. It's sort of the picture that you get of in A Christmas Carol of Scrooge sitting down in his office and painstakingly writing down everything that people owe him. There's some people that you don't have to meet them more than 5 minutes, and they're out there telling you everything that everyone has ever done wrong to them. They keep this long list. My understanding is there's some Polynesian tribes that are characterized by 2 things: eating and feuding or fighting. And so they always have a pot on to boil, and they carry around with them these reminders of the feuds that they have. So they hang them off their door, off their eaves of their houses, and they carry these reminders around of feuds. And if we're not careful, we can be guilty of that. We carry around these reminders of all the things that people have done. And within minutes of meeting them, they pull out this list and they're reciting everything that has happened. F.W. Borum tells us of a happy soul. This person has 2 pockets. One has a hole in it, and the other is carefully watched that no hole ever develops in it. Everything that he hears of a hurtful nature, insult, cutting remark, gossip, unclean suggestion, or any such thing, he writes on a piece of paper and sticks it into his pocket with the hole. Everything which he hears that is kind, true, helpful, he writes on a piece of paper and puts it in the pocket without a hole. At night, he turns out all that is in the pocket without the hole, goes over all that he had put into during the day, and thoroughly enjoys all the good things that have come his way that day. Then he sticks his hand into the pocket with the hole and finds nothing there, so he laughs and rejoices that there are no evil things to rehearse. Too many of us reverse the other, putting the evil things in the pocket without the hole, so that we can mull over them again and again, and the good things in the pocket with the hole, so that they are quickly forgotten. And love keeps no records of wrong. I'd like to read Romans chapter 4, verses 5 and 8. We just studied this. But to him who does not work, but believes on him who justifies the ungodly, his faith is accounted for righteousness, just as David also describes the blessedness of the man to whom God imputes righteousness apart from works. Blessed are those whose lawless deeds are forgiven and whose sins are covered. Blessed is the man to whom the Lord shall not impute sin. God does not treat us. God doesn't keep a list of our wrongdoings. When we ask for forgiveness, He does not keep a record of that. Number 10, love does not delight in evil. What does he mean by that? There's something in our evil nature that's attracted to the salacious and the sordid. Advertising is all sort of put out that way. The headlines in the news, those push notifications you get, school shooting happening now, school shooting in some place, or something that's some kind of iniquity. And if we're not careful, we can be attracted to that as well. But Philippians 4:8 says, finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of a good report, if there is any virtue, if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. And so one of the things I think, to make it practical, one of the ways I think we can rejoice in evil is through gossip. We think about what gossip is. It's basically dwelling or spreading on the sins or shortcomings of others in order to elevate ourselves. And love doesn't do that. Love rejoices not in evil, but in turn it rejoices in the truth. Love cannot be present when the truth is compromised. Love and truth go together. They're interwoven together. But the world likes to separate love from truth. And in the words of their songs, there's a lyrics to a song that I come across when I was studying that someone used as an example, where truth and love are separated. And the lyrics go a little bit like this: and I don't care what's right or wrong, and I don't know what will happen next, but I'm hopelessly falling in love with you. Oh, I've been walking the wire, but now I'm going down the other side because I'm hopelessly falling in love with you. And I remember something that Brother John pointed out years ago at Bible school, where people get into this mindset where they say, well, it's got to be right. I'm feeling this love, so it's got to be right. Even though it may be a totally wrong relationship. And he reminded us that God is love, not the other way around. It's not love is God, but God is love. And love rejoices in the truth. And so if it's not true, then it's not love. The two go hand in hand. Number 12, love always protects. The Greek word has the idea to cover as a roof or to bear a load as a roof would. Proverbs 10 verse 12 says, hatred stirs up strife, but love covers a multitude of sins. And we're not talking here about a dishonesty, not sweeping things under the rug, but love warns, love corrects, love exhorts, love rebukes, love disciplines. And sometimes in order to love, true love means confrontation, to protect the one you love. And I think all of us as parents can understand that. You know, our children are putting themselves in maybe a dangerous situation or along the road or whatever, and we intervene in that situation in order to protect them because we love them. And so love always protects. Number 13, love always trusts. It believeth all things. Again, we're not talking about being gullible here. But genuine love is always prepared to give the benefit of the doubt. And this one was challenging to me. What's my first impulse? A situation comes up. What's my first impulse? To believe the worst or to believe the best? If we get into the mindset of believing the worst, then we become a very critical, cynical person. And love always trusts. Believes the best. It's free but responsible. Love always hopes. Number 14, it looks forward. It refuses to see failure as final. And we get a picture of that with the prodigal son, that father who goes out every morning and looks up the road looking for his son. It's a love that hangs on. In 2 Chronicles 7:14, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sins and heal their lands. That's the attitude that God had towards us. Love always hopes. It looks forward. It refuses to see failure. Failure is final. You know, when you think about Peter and some of the things that he did, how he made that promise to Jesus that I'm going to follow you everywhere, and then very quickly went out and broke that, denied Jesus 3 times. And in John 21, after the crucifixion, and Peter says, well, he's going to go fishing again. And then Jesus meets them there on the shore and prepares them a breakfast. Jesus didn't look at Peter and say, you're done. You blew it. You're over. Instead, he makes him a breakfast there and continues to show Peter the kind of love that he had for him. Number 15, love endures. It perseveres. That's the Greek word for fortitude. And John 13, verse 6 said, Jesus loved them till the end. So he didn't give up. So there's 15 facets of the diamond that is love. And if I put my name, how well do I do? What about our church? If we put our church's name in, and how do we do there? But you know, there's one name we can put in there that perfectly fits all 15 facets, and that's Jesus. So if we read this passage and we put Jesus' name in there, it perfectly fits. And so I'm going to read this passage in Philip's translation. It's a paraphrase. If I speak with the eloquence of men and angels, but have no love, I become no more than blaring brass or a crashing cymbal. If I have the gift of foretelling the future and hold in my mind not only all human knowledge, but the very secrets of God, and if I have that absolute faith which can move mountains but have no love, I amount to nothing at all. If I dispose of all that I possess, yes, even if I give my own body to be burned, but have no love, I achieve precisely nothing. This love of which I speak is slow to lose patience. It looks for a way of being constructive. It is not possessive. It is neither anxious to impress, nor does it cherish inflated ideas of its own importance. Love has good manners and does not pursue selfish advantage. It is not touchy. It does not keep account of evil or gloat over the wickedness of other people. On the contrary, it is glad with all good men when truth prevails. Love knows no limits to its endurance, no end to its trust, no fading of its hope. It can outlast anything. It is, in fact, the one thing that still stands when all else has fallen. And I'm going to read the rest of the chapter. For if there are prophecies, they will be fulfilled and done with. If there are tongues, the need for them will disappear. If there is knowledge, it will be swallowed up in truth. For our knowledge is always incomplete, and our prophecy is always incomplete. And when the complete comes, that is the end of the incomplete. When I was a little child, I talked and felt and thought like a little child. Now that I am a man, my childish speech and feeling and thought have no further significance for me. At present, we are looking at a puzzling reflections in a mirror. The time will come when we shall see reality whole and face to face. At present, all I know is a little fraction of the truth, but the time will come when I shall know it fully as God knows me, now knows me. In this life we have three lasting qualities: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of them is love. So after he gives us these facets, then he says, love never fails. And that just was amazing to me. Love never fails. Love is permanent. All these other things, he says, are going to come to an end. Prophecies will fail. The tongues are going to cease. And if we don't exercise love, Paul says we're in a very immature state. And Paul was urging them to become mature, to allow this love to grow in their lives. Love is supreme. Love is complete. It says, whether there are tongues, they shall cease. Whether there is knowledge, it will vanish away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when that which is perfect has come, then that which is in part will be done away. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I am known in part, but then I shall know just as I also am known. And now abide faith, hope, love, these three. But the greatest of these is love. Why is love the greatest? I was thinking about that. And I think it comes back to the fact that love is embodied in God himself. God is love. He's eternal. It will never change. Love is supreme. Which brings me back to the whole idea that Jesus is our example in all this. And I'd like to relate a story of a missionary named Ian Hay. He was a missionary to Nigeria. And He described a scene in Nigeria where as he was riding his bicycle along the roadside, he came upon a leper whose body was badly damaged and ravaged as a result of the disease. And in the Nigerian environment of that time, they often used open fires in their homes to cook on. And Ian Hay said it was apparent to him that this person had obviously fallen into the fire, and being unable to have any sensation in his limbs, he was terribly burned, horribly burned. And as a result of that, he burst out in these horrible, disgusting smelling sores and ulcers. And he could smell him from a long distance. And Ian said that he'd been reading in his devotions about the fact that Jesus, who knew no sin, became sin for us, that we might become the righteousness of God. And he was struggling with that. What does that all mean? He was brought up in a Christian home. He was baptized in his youth, and he followed Christ all his life. And yet he felt like he didn't quite understand what it all meant. But there that afternoon on the roadside in Nigeria, for the first time it struck him the love of Jesus, because he asked himself this question: if I could, would I be prepared to take the filth, the stench, the pain, the burden of this poor beggar, absorb it in my body, give him my bicycle, and allow him to cycle down the road whole and healthy and free? He said, I couldn't imagine it in the best of circumstances, even if I was able to achieve it, that I would ever even attempt it. And then as he rode away on his bicycle, he just was overwhelmed for the first time, realizing that that is exactly what God did for us. He took our filth and our stench and our pain and our burden, and he took it on himself, and allows us to walk away whole and free. And I just want that impact of that to reach us this morning. That, it doesn't matter what all we're involved in, all the ministry we're involved in, all the good things that we're doing. It really boils down to relationship one with another in our churches and in our brotherhood, in our relationships with each other. And Jesus was such an example for us, and we fall so far short. But in the 2nd century, as Christianity began to unfold and the faith was spreading throughout the Roman Empire, particularly to cities like Rome and Carthage, Christians were the object of great suspicion from the people outside, from their neighbors, the government, and wild rumors began to circulate about what Christians actually taught and did in their meetings. And so to clear the air and defend the good name of Christianity, Tertullian gave an apology, and this is what he says: "It is mainly the deeds of love so noble that lead many to put a brand upon us. See how they love one another, they say, for they themselves are animated by mutual hatred. How they are ready to even die for one another, they say, for they themselves will sooner put to death than to love." John 13:34-35 says, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love one for another." Love is that essential ingredient that we must not ever lose sight of. And I hope this it will challenge us to, in everything we get involved in, as we think about our Sunday school lesson this morning and how to work that out all practically. Let's never lose sight of the fact that if love is not in the picture, none of the rest of this really matters. And if love is in the picture, the people around us are going to sit up and take notice and say, behold how they love one another. And that's my desire for myself and for our congregation. Does anyone have anything that they would like to add?